Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you are watching on YouTube, you may see a little link down below. You can click on that and you'll end up in Zoom. If you see a little link down there, you click on it again and you'll end up in Mukana. And Mukana is where you become the producer. You actually run this show. Everything we do in this show is just answering questions, talking about the things that you bring up. So it's really important for you to jump in there and ask questions early. The best time to ask is really in the pre-show during the mic checks. So we start mic checks at 6:40 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. That's when you have to be here to be on the panel. During that time, we'll be going through and talking about our audio chains, and it's a great time for you to ask questions or join the panel and be part of the conversation. Now, you can come in as early as 6. Now, we open up the doors and start working on making sure that our systems are ready to go and everything's ready to roll. So that is a good time to come in if you're not sure you're ready. Now, it's best not to try to do that during mic checks, but actually during that 6 o'clock to 6:40 time. But we'll work on it on mic checks as well. If you once we get to 7 o'clock, we're going to start doing general discussion. That's any question you have around media or virtual production. And again, it's all up to you. It's what you ask and what you vote on is what drives the entire conversation. Then we go into other subjects that we think are important. Today, we'll spend 2 hours, about 2 hours. We take a little bit of a break talking about education. We're going to have a good one today. I have questions for all of you. So it should be a lot of fun. We're working on something here that might be a good brainstorm. So we'll be talking about that in education. And then at 10 o'clock, from 10 to 11, we'll be talking about metahumans and Unreal Engine. We're dealing with a lot of that right now. And so Nick Justin from Drexel University will be here to answer your questions and to show you a little bit more about tying the phone specifically into driving a metahuman. So all of that's coming up. And then we're not going to do the test kitchen this week. So we'll just jump straight to 3 o'clock where we open up the doors and you can listen to us get ready for the show. So from 3 to 5, you'll just hear us organizing things, discussing amongst ourselves. Nate is cutting the show again. Nate is cutting the show this week. So he's not calling the show from Salt Lake City. We got his board, his switching board, his ATEM panel connected directly to our switcher. So he is watching the multi-view from our office in Zoom and cutting the show in Salt Lake City. Here's the interesting thing about it is last night during rehearsals, he's cutting the show and I was fixing super sources from my house. So I was at my house fixing some of the super source stuff and he's cutting the show and the switch is happening in the office. And it's, so there's a lot of, and so it just kind of keeps on going. We keep on experimenting with that. We're experimenting with a lot of things there. So it's worth checking out to be part of the behind the scenes. And so you'll see that at 3 o'clock from 3 to 5. Then at 5 o'clock, you get to watch the show and listen to Nate call the show and listen to him talking through comms. And it's, he's a pro. It's good person to listen to learn a lot about live production. Then after the show, we'll answer questions. What worked? We'll talk about what worked, what didn't work. We'll brainstorm with you. It is probably, other than this show, this is probably the best time where you can actually affect a show. You're listening to it and you can actually make suggestions that we'll use the next week. So pretty interesting little setup. Anyway, that's what we got coming up. And let's jump into the questions. Go ahead, Bill.
Thank you, Alex. Ken Jordan is here up top from Surrey, UK, and on the panel. Says in the ATEM Setup app under Configure, panel settings, can you discuss the reasons behind your setup of the following 3 options: switching mode, picture-in-picture keyer, and Chroma Keyer?
Waiting for someone. So switching mode is typically basically you can have preview and program. Or you can do, I think it's A/B switching that basically just cuts as you start to hit it. So it's basically a direct bus. The reason most people in sports use the direct cut, and everybody else uses preview and program. Go ahead, Jonas.
I think what he means is there are settings to leave the picture-in-picture keyer on doing a cut. And the frustrating thing is that the cut button on the Atem Mini doesn't send just a cut signal. It's a different cut than if you trigger a cut in the Atem. So you can set up what keyers get changed on that cut via the setup tool.
Well, I think that, yeah, maybe it's not transition control, because what I was thinking about is program preview versus A/B direct.
That's also there.
Ken, do you want to elaborate?
Yes, it's just there's 4 settings there, and I know the last one I set my thing to 1%. It's just the other 3 with the 2 options. I was just, I wasn't sure which of the options to choose in those 3 settings, and why one's better than the other in whatever use case people are using it with.
Yeah, I'd have to wait for other people to talk about the picture-in-picture. I'm not a big fan of picture-in-picture, so I don't use it very often. But I feel like it looks very corporate. So even though I work on corporate, I don't like to admit it. I mean, I like to admit it, but I don't like to show that, I'm going to do a corporate thing. I want corporate to be broadcast. And so you don't see a lot of picture-in-picture in broadcast. And so, so I tend not to use picture-in-picture. I don't know that much about it. I will say Chroma Key is not a great keyer. So if you have you should have the advanced keyer that's available to you for keying. I wouldn't use the Chroma Key if I didn't have to. Go ahead, Jonas.
What those settings are meant for is, since the Atem has no possibility of assigning like a key that will be turned on with the next cut, because you can't do that on the Atem Mini. What you can set up here is that the keyers constantly turn off on with each cut. So you could be like have a wide shot and then with a picture-in-picture with the presentation. So you can cut between those 2 modes. Mm-hmm. And the same with Chroma Key. So if you let it stay on with transition, you basically cut what's behind the Chroma Key and can change like presentation sources. And the same for the picture-in-picture key. So for presentations, you set it to stay on with transition. So you can present different things and put yourself on top, since you want to be on top with the same camera. That's when I would change it.
Who was here showing? I'm trying to think of who was here talking about. They were showing pipelines in front of them in Keynote. It was like the last week, I think. It completely changed the way I think about presentations. So I think
it was John Barker. Showing his apps.
Yeah, John Barker was showing his little Keynote things, and I was like, I'm going to see if I can build whole presentations that way. Where things are appearing around me. And so instead of being a picture-in-picture, I suddenly, like, his presentation kind of popped my brain open. Every once in a while you see someone do something, and that way of doing it was really impressive. Like, I'm super interested in what he did there. So I'm going to try to, figure out that picture. That's something that I think is compelling. Go ahead, Peter.
Well, that was what I was going to say, is that kind of picture-in-picture works really well. But the reason I set it to turn off the keyer when I cut is simply because invariably the keyer's got something on it that I don't want in the frame when I cut.
Right. Yeah. So anyway, hopefully that helped. Next question.
Jonas Dattel here on the panel, who was just speaking from Reutlingen, Germany, says, can a ZoomRoom send more than one camera?
It can. Well, not yet. Kind of. Now, a ZoomRoom can get one camera. I don't know about a ZoomRoom sending more than one camera. I don't know if you can do the same screen share. I think that what we've talked about having a Zoom connection carry to is to go into screen share, and inside of it optimize for video. We should try that. In fact, I'll see if I can pull up a video here to do that. Anyway, go ahead, Jonas.
So on their website, they claim it supports unlimited camera feeds for in the room. The question is if it transmits multiple, or if it just is like, yeah, we can switch unlimited cameras that are in the room, since that's not clear. Because sending multiple would be amazing.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, what that means, for that. So I'm just trying to figure out. Let's see if we can. I'm trying to find a good video that we can play with to see if there's to play it out. But I think that, yeah, I don't know. I haven't tried anything with Zoom Rooms, because for us, Zoom Rooms are absorbing something. They're pulling something in. They're not really putting something out. So but yeah, go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, I mean, here's what the screen looks like in the back end of a Zoom Room when you click on camera. And right now I have a capture card that just, pops up as live streaming device. And there's new tick NDI video, but it looks like I can only select one at a time. There is on another, let me see if I can cut to it. The only way that I can think of is there was something called network whiteboard camera, which was through a company called Captivo, but that still, it doesn't answer the question. I mean, that's the only thing that I've seen. I was hoping that was going to be NDI because there's a setting in the back end. I'll have to hook up my switcher to show you that screen. But anyways, I don't think that I think that it's just unlimited switching between these sources that you're seeing on the screen right now. So if I have 99 cameras, as I hit the button that says switch camera, or somebody else can remotely like take over this machine. And so this machine that you're looking at, like try it, Jonas, try hitting DV Store Conference Room, say request camera control, and then switch camera. Or can you? Can you right click on DV Store Conference Room and request camera control? In the gallery?
Yeah. No, I can switch camera.
Okay,
Yeah,
you just switched it.
They have a special sharing mode for another camera. You can share 2 cameras. The question
Well, there's
is,
4 hooked up. Well, 3. It's switching between them.
yeah, but if you click on share, there's a special share camera menu. The question is if it will come up as a screen share or as another camera feed.
Oh, I see what you're talking about in advanced share. So I don't want to hit share screen, but yeah, that's different. That's not 2 at the, well, it is 2 at the same time, but it's one big screen share and one small.
Even for the
If that makes
ZoomRoom?
sense. Oh, that's true. I could
Because
try.
in the ZoomRoom, it's different. Like they claim it's different because then it could be cool for the guest chef to have one ZoomRoom with 2 cameras attached. And then the ZoomRoom shares those 2 cameras into one meeting. And
So let's see what happens real quick.
So far we've had it. I mean, what I would like to see is how quick it happens. I mean, it's been a little clunky, has been our experience of it. Like when you're cutting a far end.
Can I have screen share on that? Can you make DV Store Conference Room a co-host? Or yeah, and let's just see what happens if I hit share screen. Okay, so I'm going to hit share screen, camera, new tech NDI video. There's nothing going in there. So that's one camera, and then yeah, it's not. I don't have a actual source going in there because I don't have it programmed right now. But so that's one camera as the screen share and one camera as well. Do you see
my question is really how responsive
it is. You still see the scopes. The scopes are still up. So that's 2 technically.
Right.
And with a ZoomRoom on the other side, you could get both.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, let me stop that share. We can do another test once I run some an NDI feed in there.
Yeah, if we have time, we'll come back to it. Let's go to the next question.
Moving on, Lauren Willoughby is up next, and Lauren Willoughby asks from Louisville, Kentucky, anyone had experience using wireless HDMI with the ATEM Mini? It'd be cool to add a floating camera to our events. Recommendations? Thanks.
I've done this with Filmic Pro. So use Filmic Pro, set it to clean output, and then have it share via AirPlay to a Apple TV. The Apple TV is connected to the ATEM. It works great. It's a little bit sluggish, just a touch. You feel it a little bit as you move, so it's not quite as responsive, but it works really well. Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, we were testing these in the post show one day. These are the Atem 500 RX by Vaxis. Little Sony batteries go on the back, and then it's got a cold shoe, so you can put it on the transmitter on your HDMI camera, and then you put the receiver on your ATEM, and it's got a little screen that shows you 1080p or 720, whatever you're sending. And these will go 500 feet. And I also have an SDI version somewhere around here. My hallway's filling up with stuff. It's like I'm bringing the store into my hallway.
Who makes those?
Vaxis, VAXIS, and these are less than $500. They're pretty impressive compared to what we used to have to buy with the Teradek bolts. So if you want to send wireless HDMI, these are very, very low latency, like less than
what's the signal
less than
path?
500 milliseconds.
Wi-Fi
it's HDMI to HDMI.
No, I mean
HDMI and then HDMI.
What's
HDMI,
the
full size in?
Radio signal? Oh, HDMI. Excuse me. Sorry, I thought it was radio signal. Got it.
What is a radio signal? It's a 2.4 or 5.8, whatever that is.
I think it's 5 gigahertz.
5 gigahertz. Yeah. They're cool though. They work.
Do they
I
have
haven't had any dropouts on.
external antennas, or is it all internal?
This one's all internal. And the nice thing about this one is that it has a USB-C port, so you can run off of those bricks, like a phone charger type brick. So if you're running for an extended period of time, you just hook one of those up and you can transmit or receive for a long time. So you don't have to just worry. But it does have a built-in battery as well.
It's cool. Go ahead,
Cool
Leo.
stuff.
So my colleague has got these ones, the Holyland ones, which also are HDMI, and they then also do with the same batteries, and they come through. And he's been really happy with them. He's been wandering around, and he plugs one in and wanders around with a camera, and he's been happy with that.
And how far does he wander?
Well, under lockdown, we don't go very far, but he's been going around venues that we've been doing. So he's probably been doing about 100 feet around in an area. I'm picking them up with 2, and so on the other side, he we built a cage on it around the camera.
I mean, a lot of them work pretty well when you get into short range and without a lot of clutter. The problem you get into is when there's a lot of transceivers. But if you're doing it at your house, we've been talking a lot about this related to IFBs, of how do we transport an IFB back to a host, like so the guest chefs and so on and so forth and Mad in the Kitchen. It only has to run 15 feet. We're testing. I have next week coming like a little IFB, like a little mic transmitter that's $60 or $70. I'm going to test it because I don't have to listen to it. I just have to. We don't have to listen to it on the show. The chef has to listen to it. So if it's not perfect, it's not as big of a deal. They'll still get it needs to be good enough to listen to comfortably, but it doesn't have to be radio quality. And so we're testing a lot of those. So I think for a lot of the video and audio. Wireless transmitters, those work pretty well when we go down that path. Next question.
Gabriela Lasuerda in Milan, Italy says, on a Mac, what software would you use to discover all the devices connected to your local area network? So a network sniffer.
Go ahead, Peter.
I use Wireshark.
Yep.
That's the quintessential tool that you can use in almost all platforms to find what's on your network.
Yeah, go ahead, TJ.
The thing I would recommend is connect to your router directly. Most routers have some sort of administration control panel where you can get into it through a web browser. I'd recommend using a wired connected web browser. Look up your router information, figure out how to get into that, and from there you will see everything on your network. Usually there's a panel that says connected devices, and sometimes it's a lot more than you think.
In the hardware end of things, a lot of us use things that are somewhat connected to a link runner, a Fluke link runner, or Sprint, or there's a variety of different pieces of hardware. It's not software, but we just plug it in and it'll just go down and tell you every device that it's going through to get to the internet. Go ahead, John, and then Leo.
I have Wireshark too, but for ease of use, I use IP Scanner Pro. Works great.
Go ahead, Leo.
So I've been using Fing in the past, and I found that quite useful. But they've been playing around with it in terms of how much you can actually use it without buying licenses and changing things.
Okay, Mickey.
Yeah, Fing is handy on mobile devices, but another software solution with a very low barrier to entry would be Angry IP Scanner.
Paul, and we'll move on.
Yeah, I use Netgear Genie. It comes with the Netgear router. It shows you all the devices, and you can manage them from there.
Great. Next question.
Leo Mendel of London here on the panel today says, is there a way in Mukana to show only single tags, i.e. only the first hour questions?
In the back end, yes. So not in the front end. We'll work on that. Go ahead and put that. That's a good suggestion. Go ahead and put it into the Mukana in Discord, and we'll figure that out. In the back end, we have a way to sort that. Next question.
Liberty White from Atlanta, hi Liberty, says, is there a way to bypass Zoom waiting rooms if you don't want us to require authentication to sign into Zoom?
I think you have to do just one of three: password, room authentication, or waiting room. You don't have to do all of them. So a lot of times I definitely turn the waiting room off for most things. And I usually just use a lot of times I use just password because authentication can jack people up a little bit. We use it here because we want security. We're doing a public event, but for most events, I often will turn that off. The advantage of keeping authentication on is that it makes it harder for people to randomly jump into your meeting. Go ahead, Jonas.
Exactly. You need to disable the waiting room, you need a password. I don't think only require authentication is enough.
All right, go ahead, Peter.
I was going to say the other thing to remember is you actually have to do that from the web back end. You can't actually do it from if you're trying to schedule a meeting through the client, it won't let you do that. You actually have to do it from the website.
Yep. Next question.
Guy Cochran in Seattle says, where in Discord do you go to sort to see the most recent posts?
All right, go ahead, Chad.
What you can do is in the search bar at the top right, click and then select after specific date and select yesterday or the day before yesterday and make sure it's sorted by new, and you'll see all the things that came in since that time, newest to oldest.
That's great.
Thank you for that.
Next question.
Stuart Fairweather in Melbourne, who hasn't been on the panel in a while. We miss. Cooking with Pi. Anyone know how to get a Pi to see a WMV stream in VLC?
He might have stumped us. Mickey's like, what?
Sorry, yeah. I was just thinking like WMV. Wow.
Windows Movies. Wow, it's been a long time.
I think we're stumped. Sorry about that. Next question.
Jason Seep in, I believe, Sipe, I'm sorry, in Marietta, California, says, I run a video production program on a high school campus. We're looking to ensure broadcast quality camera drops for live video from any room on campus that can be routed to any of our switchers, in some cases using 16 channels. What is the best way to do this? Would you recommend NDI, Dante AV, or something else? Thanks.
If you want to do it over the network, I think NDI is probably the right solution for that. I wouldn't use Dante AV. I think it's a little too new. I think that if you're looking for a IP solution to do all of that routing, it will take some IP infrastructure, to make that work. I would, of course, I would run. It depends on whether you get to run new cables. So I'm assuming that you can't. That you have Ethernet that you have to use. And in that case, I would probably lean towards NDI for those solutions. And then you'll have to have NDI switchers, and you'll have to have or software or whatever to make all of that work. If I had the opportunity to do that, and I was going to and I really wanted broadcast quality, of course I would. I'd run probably coax to the rooms, or I'd run fiber to the rooms, and then have breakouts there. It just depends on how much budget you have. So, if you are a part of the COVID rain of money that is occurring in the education system right now, I would run TAC-12 to every room. I mean, that's the future. I mean, the future is being able to put unlimited bandwidth into each room so that you can do all kinds of things. So if you have the money right, you'll have more money now, or many schools have more money now than they'll have in the history of the world. They'll never have more than this again. So public schools are about, have the most money they'll ever have right now. And so I would spend it on fiber, because it's as good as it's going to get. And so you really should get the fiber in there if you got the money, and get the breakouts, get the stuff that you can do. So that now you can move Ethernet, you can move audio, you can move video, you can move for the next 10 years. Rather than how are you going to fix something for right now. So anyway, that'd be my recommendation, is to really double down on fiber. But if not, I think NDI is probably the right solution. Next question. Stuart
Fairweather, Melbourne, Australia. Again, people ask about dynamic range of a camera sensor. Why doesn't anyone discuss the dynamic range of lighting?
Well, it depends on how you build the shot. So we definitely pay attention to that when we're light metering or we're looking at something. We're looking at the dynamic range of a scene. And a lot of times we're managing that when we put up silks to, basically cut down on the light on a subject, we're managing the contrast of that foreground and background. So we do a lot of that as far as managing that dynamic range so that we can fit within film or within video. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, it's because basically I think your camera iris is a variable. So depending on the aperture you have set, that lighting ratio is going to change. How much dynamic range you have from brightest to darkest is going to be constantly variable depending on where your fixed iris is. And if you have an auto iris camera, it gets even more complicated because the camera is adjusting as the light value goes up coming through the lens. So it just gets, I think it would be too complicated to do that.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, in terms of the dynamic range of lighting, that's very much so a creative choice, creative decision that's done, as opposed to a discussion of technical limitations of equipment. Yeah, you typically, when working with a DP, you're talking about ratios, lighting ratios between your key light, your fill light, and your backlight or your rim light, and the differences between how intense each light source is determines the dynamic range of your entire lighting setup.
But a lot of times that's one of the things we use scopes for is to see. So when we pop open scopes and we're looking through that, a lot of times we're looking at how do I keep my highlights in without and still keep my blacks in as well. So how do I pull those together? And so a lot of times you're affecting how you're doing lighting and where that light coverage is and how it works based on looking at, does it fit all into the scopes that I have? Go ahead, Sky.
I took several classes from Shane Hurlbut talking about and he did a whole tour called about Illuminati, or not Illuminati. How do I anyway, the concept of shadows and how he uses actually more lights, but also with lots of shaders and blocks. And so I think the depth of field is what I understand art to be, is that shadow gives you that third dimension in a two-dimensional media. So I think the dynamic range is in the shadows and the shading is what kind of the question is from an artistic point of view.
Yep. Next question.
James Foslian, Minneapolis, Minnesota says, just watched Diane Fishon in a new YouTube video on Davinci color management, a group project with source material where we all worked a simple scene with different camera color specs would be great. Is there any interest in this?
Yes. I think a lot of it is just making sure we have enough time to go shoot something that we can all use. But we're definitely working towards that. So a lot of the stuff that you see with us experimenting with Mad in the Kitchen, the behind the scenes of shooting, I don't want to just give you the footage. I want you to watch the footage get created and be able to talk about it and ask questions and so on and so forth. So we're definitely working towards that. It just probably won't happen for a little while. It's on the roadmap, just a little further down the road. Go ahead, Bill.
I was going to say that's all the more important, and I would highly recommend that we do that if we can, but it's also the equipment is changing. As HDR continues to come in, the idea of color management, these things are constantly evolving. So trying to keep up with all the new techniques is not easy.
I mean, the big thing is generally when possible, we'll shoot with log. So once we have log, we can go to all the different formats because log has a higher dynamic range than all the HDR formats. So we can start with that, and then it's just a matter of figuring out where we go from there. Go ahead, Sky.
Guy has again brought many things to this party, and one of them is the ISO that we could potentially, if he can help me figure out how to plug in my S drive, we can record today's and we can start having some footage that people can start playing with.
Yeah, that'd be great. Next question.
Just need help plugging it in.
Right.
Scott Mueller in Clinton Corner, New York says, how is the panel finding new gigs and clients for someone who is pivoting into this industry, putting in time practicing, assisting others who already have gigs and watching office hours every day? Do you recommend building a website, having a resume or curriculum vitae, and or using Facebook or Google ads?
Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah. Well, in the UK, we have a thing called networking events, which happen before normal working day, and now obviously due to COVID, they're all using Zoom events, and so very recently I've started going on a few of those, and obviously then they see the setup, then those questions asked, and then if you really want to knock it out the park, you kind of then using your ATEM, you pull in a lower third, some animation, and then finally you kind of use your you do some telestrating, and yeah, the that will generate a lot of, well, I know for me it's generated a ton of work and a ton of interest from that. So I would recommend, yeah, looking for networking events where they're using Zoom calls, and if you have a good setup, then normally people do ask, how do I do that?
I mean, one of the reasons that I built office hours was so that people could network with each other, and get to know each other. And so, I'm hiring an increasing number of people within this group. I know other people are hiring back and forth. I think that I would get involved with things like people working on their end, whether it's Mad in the Kitchen or other things. Basically getting involved with stuff and being part of things is how you get. It's not how everybody gets work; it's how I get work. I get work by being involved in things that I'm interested in doing. And I find whatever way I can to be involved in those areas. And generally, if I do that and I don't overtly try to network, like just be in the space and be useful and don't be annoying. Like it doesn't take very much, because a lot of people have trouble with those things. And so if you can just be useful in a space and make that work, you go a long way. I would recommend using this platform to do that. I think that the way to do that is to be involved on the Discord, to listen to the show, to get on the panel, take part in projects. I mean, those are all things that are designed to have people intermingle in a real way. I've kind of gotten to the point where I don't need to talk to people like at NAB, because I don't know what they're like until I've done something with them, until I've asked them to do something and they've responded and done it or whatever. What they have to say doesn't mean anything to me. That's the difference between an intellectual and someone who does execution is basically the difference between an observer and an operator. And all I'm interested in is operators, so I don't really care what people have opinions about, so the people, this panel is largely made up of operators, and so the key is to operate and then to share that. And then a lot of the other stuff sorts itself out. Go ahead, Chad, and then Bill.
Agree. Helping people is a great way to show what you're capable of. Also, don't ignore the channels in Discord for I Need Help, which is a good opportunity to help people. And also there's an open positions channel that you can browse from time to time.
Just be careful of taking paid positions before you really know what you're doing. When you're pivoting, what you want to do is take free positions. I know that some people, people get very upset when you say that, but when people pay you, they expect you to execute. When you are volunteering, you got to be useful and do it well, but you have some room to figure things out, and to learn and to do the stuff. One of the reasons that we're working on Mad in the Kitchen is because I'm experimenting. Like we're seeing, like I would not just, we're just going to have Nate plug in from Salt Lake City and do my next show. Now, after I've done it a couple times, I might go, oh, that's a really good idea, And so, but I don't want the money because I don't want the liability. So just always keep that in mind as well, Bill.
Yeah, I'm emphasizing exactly what's being said right now. If you're going downhill on skis, you want to be a little out over your skis, but you don't want to get too out over your skis, because if you crash, you can really hurt yourself. And in production and these kind of things, you want to be honest about what you can do. Don't oversell yourself and get to a point where you're going to have a failure, because boy, reputations sure do stick now. It takes a long time to get over that kind of failure where you said I can do a 5,000 person live Zoom meeting with interactive everything, and then it just never goes on, and that'll stick with you for a long time these days.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Next question.
Eric Price in Leavenworth, Kansas says, I've seen a couple of people with Loopback in their audio chain lower Fenwick. What role is that playing in your audio setup? No, Mickey is one of those, but also clearly using Audio Hijack. How are they different?
Mickey, do you want to talk about it?
Yeah. Well, Loopback is more of a tool to route audio from one source, be it an interface or a program, to other interfaces or programs. And Audio Hijack is a tool that one would typically use if they want to do processing to the audio signal. In terms of using Loopback in the audio chain, if you're using Audio Hijack, you need to get audio, in and out of hijack. So Loopback is a tool that you could use for that. And also, one thing with Zoom is that if it sees an interface that has more than 2 channels coming in, it's gonna grab all those channels and sum them together. So if you want to get around that, if you have like say an interface that has 16 channels coming in, you can use Loopback to create a virtual interface that's only 2 channels and only pick off the channels that you really need to send to Zoom, and Zoom won't sum them together. You can broadcast in stereo if you need to.
Next question.
Lauren Willoughby in Louisville, Kentucky says, can you recommend a portable, versatile PA-style loudspeaker good for random live events? Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, for something small, I'm a big fan of the JBL Eon lines. They have a couple of models there, including subwoofers. But if they're not over no they're not that affordable compared to say others from Behringer, but they last quite a while. But yeah, also if you need something cheaper, look at I think they call it the Euro Live line from Behringer. They have a bunch of models there as well. Don't go with something though that has a mixer built in. You'd want to definitely want to have a separate mixer than have the mixer built into the speaker itself.
Go ahead, Dill.
So I use JBLs and I love them for decades. If it's a small thing you want and it's only PA, and I say that because PA stands for public address, that's mostly talking to a crowd. Companies like Anchor have horn-based PA systems that'll cut through and are more efficient than the woofer-driven I'm playing music for a crowd type of things like we're talking about now. Both have their place. Decide what you really need.
Go ahead, Sky.
I know I've seen them at Costco. They're small little boxes that have little wheels on them, and you can also have a microphone plug into it. So they're not that expensive, but they're a little tiny, small little public address system, maybe for a birthday party or backyard kind of event, and pretty durable.
Yeah, I've used a couple of those, and they actually work pretty well. As far as a great little, they all kind of pack up, and you can put them into a box, and you can open it up, and it's got an amp, and you can move the speakers around. We've been pretty successful with using those as a general use. Although now I use mostly powered speakers, and so I just want, and I have to admit the JBLs are what we kind of leaned on pretty heavily. But when it's my own money, I bought Behringers. so for work I use JBL, and for home I use Behringers. Go ahead, Jeffrey, and then Leo.
Yeah, $500 to $1,000 range. You can get QSC, you can get Mackie, you can get Behringers, of course. They have three styles that you want to think about: the 12-inch, the 15-inch, and the 18-inch. And that really depends on the size of the room that you want to broadcast to. And then, of course, if you really want to get crazy, you can get a subwoofer top-end style and go from there. On the low end, Pyle actually makes a pretty good 12-inch to 15-inch speaker system. That is a powered PA system that does the job just like an Anchor would. It has just a little bit more oomph for a room.
And just remember that one of the biggest things that'll affect your speakers is their height. People absorb a lot of energy, so getting your speakers up over the height of your head at head height or higher is going to generally at average head height will allow the sound to carry much further than if it's at chest level or below, because the bodies are actually absorbing a lot of the energy. Go ahead, Leo.
I mentioned this before, but when you get these, make sure you look at the measurements and the size of the things, because we bought one before because it was about $3 more to buy the next size up. We realized this thing was just completely untransportable. It was just too big to carry around on the underground.
I have done that. I bought ones that look like a certain size when they're
you can't see the size.
Then they arrive and you're like, oh no. Yeah, exactly.
Because I can't carry this.
yeah, exactly. Next question.
Moving on, Scott Mueller of Clinton Corners, New York says there are so many different Beelink models out there. Can you recommend which model or configuration you recommend for buying 2 or 3 and bringing Zoom ISOs into an ATEM? And could an Amazon link to whatever we decide on be posted?
Courtney knows the most about the Beelinks because they're by Courtney. But I don't know. I don't. We get a variety of different ones. I know the price points. Ours are about, the smaller ones are in the $225 range, and the larger ones are at $335 range. And I'll have to look at which ones are which. But and I haven't tested them as much. We kind of tested them as sending them out as remotes. They do not work for that for us over time because of 720p limitations. But they could very well work for the HDMI. We just haven't done the motion tests on them. After we did that first, like, oh, this is going to be great, and it didn't work, I was like, okay, we need a whole battery of tests before we go any further. Go ahead, Mickey, and then Jeffrey.
Yeah, I think the signature series by Courtney that he originally started using was the Gemini M, which is $259 US.
Is that what you're showing there, Guy?
The one that he recommended is the lower end one, and I just felt like it was too underpowered for what I wanted to do with meeting meters, because I need to buy like 4 of these. So I bought this one, which is the Ryzen one, which has the AMD Ryzen 35.
And how much is it?
H, it says CPU. This one, there was a coupon that was like $60 off, so it knocked it down to like right around $500. And then it came with 8 gigs of RAM, and I upgraded the RAM to 256. Or excuse me, I wish I could upgrade the RAM to 250 to 16 gigs, and then it came with a 256 NVMe, and I upgraded that to a terabyte just to have, because I had one laying around. But yeah, that's the one. I'll put a link in the chat to the one that I got. And so far, I've ran Zoom. No, I didn't put ZoomRooms on it. I put our meeting meter software on it through regular Zoom and pushed it out, and it was capable of pushing out that 1080p signal. So I was happy with it.
Go ahead, Jeffrey, and then Paul.
It's important to understand that Zoom goes CPU intensive over GPU intensive. The reason why is because if you're excuse me, if you're a CEO, sorry, if you're a CEO, then you might have more of a CPU in your laptop than you GPU, and they want that group to be able to still present their systems. With that said, sorry, Ryzen 5 Core i5 would probably be your best bet, because you'll have at least 2 cores in there. Try and get 4 cores for the best optimal system right there. And Beelink has all of those there. Don't get Atem. Don't get Intel's a lower end other than the I. It starts with a C. I can't think of the name. But those are those ones you want to avoid.
Yep. Go ahead, Paul.
I think Jeffrey's thinking of Celeron. I got the i5 model, rock solid. Boy, that thing just trucks it day and night. Really good little computer.
There you go. Next question.
Luca Pasquale Giannini of Montreal, Canada, next. And he says, a few days ago, you mentioned that the Blackmagic cameras can stream at 1080-60 at most. What then is the use case for a Blackmagic camera against a mirrorless camera, Panasonic, Sony, and so forth, for the rest of us?
Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, the main thing is the ability to control them from the ATEM. That's the thing. So, I can see this, well, you probably can't see this scene here, but you can control the focus, the gain, etc. That's the key, really.
I also think that their AP or their UX, the interface that they have there is way better than all the other camera manufacturers. It is the most pleasurable interface that I've ever used on a camera. Of just tap, 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 tap. Here's what I want. I've got an interface up here. I can do it. It's so much easier in the field to make those changes and get to what you need to quickly. So I think that there's an advantage there. Also, when you start doing mirrorless, is it going to be, are you going to be able to use existing lenses? So being able to use EF for the 6K is also important to me. So those things have been, but to Ken's point, being able to control them is a big deal. And also, fundamentally, you're buying into a company that's moving quickly. The legacy camera manufacturers are not going to be able to keep up with Blackmagic, because Blackmagic is acting decisively, and it's just the nature of having a person being Grant Petty account, just saying this is what I want and moving down the path. These other companies are really big. They've been around for a long time. They don't have that anymore, and so they're unable to, they have size, but he is now getting to the point where he's the same size as they are. It's privately held, so we don't see how big it's becoming, but he's not falling behind on size. He's gaining size, and he's still moving as nimbly as he was before. That's not, so when you buy into it, you're buying into trajectory. I pay a lot of attention to trajectory. So the trajectory is much more stable with Blackmagic than the others. That's all. Next question.
Peter Moore in Auckland, New Zealand says, has Guy or anyone on the panel on Mukana used the mixeffect.app mentioned here on an M1 Mac yet?
Go ahead, Guy.
So here it is. You made me spend $49, Peter. So while your question was sitting there in the queue, I ran over to the M1, and so I'm screen sharing right now. The way NDI is set up, I have to show two screens. But anyway, I downloaded the app. It didn't recognize my $49 purchase, so it was in basic mode. So you had me spend $49 more too, but I don't mind because I love this app so much. So there's the switcher part. There's the audio, macros, media, transitions. Again, this is the base model M1, the $699 one. And there's the super source. One thing I'm noticing though is that my presets aren't under there, like that I had shown earlier with the iPad version. So I'm curious as to what happened there. I'm kind of sad that they're not there. But anyways, it does work.
So it's kind of it really is an entirely new interface completely for the switcher. Does it not have anything? Is it missing anything that the ATEM software has?
I know. Let's walk by it side by side, every single one. No.
But in general,
Show
does
will
it
be
feel
3
like
hours.
you could run an entire show just in Mix Effect Pro?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I'm noticing too is back to the switcher part is down below. I have all my I have my aux outs, and I can choose those as well. And then the really nice thing is that new streaming service, so I can enter in my credentials here, because isn't it harder to do? From what I remember, right, you had to do to live stream here. Yeah, it's still that crazy. Don't you have to do XML or something if you say you wanted to let's see, there's the key, the server.
Yeah, if you want to add a new service, you have to edit the XML, or somebody needs to generate an XML for you that you can then import.
Is there any easy way to tie Mix Effect into a Stream Deck? Have they built those services into it?
It supports OSC, I think. Victor was mentioning that it supports OSC.
It would just be interesting if they built it seems like Mix Effect Pro could build it could support OSC, but it could also build a very direct connection to Stream Deck, published to it.
I think now that I think about it, there was something by the developer on one of the forums. I'll go back and dig in. I'll do a searching companion here in a second and circle back.
Yeah. Next question.
Come on, Guy. You've had it open for 2 minutes. Explain everything.
Come on now. What are you doing?
Chop.
Scott Mueller of Clinton Corners is back. Can you give an example of what is in a basic kit that you send out? I guess this is for streaming. Do you send displays and keyboards as well?
We often do. We often have displays. Depends on the kit, whether we send out like a 10-inch display or a 24-inch display. A 10-inch display actually works pretty well most of the time because it keeps the eye contact a little bit closer to the camera. Our smaller kits have webcams. Larger kits have 6Ks. So that switches back and forth. We decide whether we want to do a teleprompter for eye contact or for reading. And then typically our lights are the lights. We've kind of the smaller kits have the Nan light pano tubes. Chris Comfort got me hooked on those, and now we're buying lots of them. So we buy them by the bushel, and so we send 2 of those out. They're great because they're small, portable, easy to put up, and they look good, and they can change color and everything else. And we're paying attention to shipping restrictions, and so they're tiny. And then otherwise, we're sending out the Nan Light 68Bs, which are the bicolor Nan lights, and we found them to be the right size. We had a bunch of 100s. We got a couple 200s. They're too big, just in case you're wondering, to send out. The Nan Light 200Bs are too big, but the Nan Light 100Bs are great, but they're just hard to deal with as far as the shipping goes. But the 68 seem to be the right size, and so on and so forth. And then we send out typically audio implements, headphones, and then we are typically sending out a mix pre with on the higher end kits, the mix pre with a Countryman, or we send out on the low end kits, the Pile with the Audio Technica USB converter. Go ahead, Leo.
You said 6s. Do you mean the 6Bs? The 6Cs?
Yeah.
These
Pavo 6B.
6C. They
I'm
are.
sorry, I keep on saying B.
Yeah. These are. So I run 2 of those behind me which have now completely ruined the actual effect because it's now pointing up to the ceiling. And we found them to be absolutely great. We bought
we're getting close to sending
15,
3 out
20 of those.
specifically because of you. So you've proven to me that we should be doing we should be sending 3 or 4 out because we can have 2 light the person and 1 or 2 in
corners.
the background where, hey, just throw that behind, right, and know, and sending out. I mean, like we're going to be testing in the next.
Let me put it
weeks.
back so that people know what I'm talking about.
But it's actually because Leo uses them in the background. I was thinking, oh, we really should send out a group of them because this tiny little kit can do all this lighting and everything else. In it, it's pretty impressive.
It's better when it's dark in here.
yeah. But it's so we're really happy with those as far as this. We may end up centralizing on all of them, but I still like the larger sources for the larger kits. Next question.
Scott Mueller's back again from Clinton Corners. For someone who wants to build clientele and has some experience producing Zoom events, what's the hierarchy on investing in gear? ATEM, multiple computers and displays, software, camera and lighting for your own setup, kits to send out. Where would you go first? What would you spend for first?
I'd make sure my own kit looks really good first. You can't tell people you're working on online events and then not look good on your, you have to, and it can be a simple gray background with a Brio or whatever. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to go crazy, but you have to look and sound solid or they're not going to trust you. Go ahead, Leo.
I have exactly the same. Every single time I get onto a call, I never wear these headphones. I always wear some in-ears that are small so people don't see them. I try and avoid the microphone, but actually I don't actually mind so much showing the microphone because I think it shows that you have a quality microphone. Every single time I get on a call with a new client, they go, "Oh, you sound a little brilliant. How does that work under Zoom?" And it's like, it's just you have to do things. Oh, and also make sure that you use something like meetingmeters or something else to pop the meeting up to 720p before you actually have it, so that they know, so that they actually see it. Otherwise, you're wasting your time. Or buy a license from Guy.
Right. Next question.
TJ Asher here on the panel, often from Minneapolis, Minnesota, says Ken demonstrated telestrating, and it looked like he was using an Apple Pencil. Can he explain his routing for pulling his iPad in and what app he is using on the iPad?
Go ahead, Ken.
Yes, while building my lower third in Keynote on the iPad, at the end so it's just Keynote on the iPad, and then in the top right hand corner there's a little icon with a pencil and a scribble, and then I realized he's got a fake laser pointer, and then be able to do basic telestrating but with colors, well, depending on the key that you're using. So yeah, that's just Keynote on the iPad, and the iPad is just and connected via I'll turn that off. Can't see it. Connected via this cable.
Right. Yeah, and one of the things that that I do is I build like 40 slides on Keynote. So if I'm going to use that, I use like 40 white slides on Keynote, and then I just go, if I want to erase something, it allows me to, without having to hit reset, I can just scroll and draw a new thing if I'm using Keynote instead of a Wacom tablet. Go ahead, Leo, and then TJ.
So I was just going to say, Ken, are you then putting that into the Atem Mini into a second port, and then you're keying that over the top of your main screen? Is that what you're doing?
Yes, because I was trying to do an animated lower third, and the easiest way I found out doing that was to have it's like a green screen on the in the Keynote, so then I can key that out while my lower third kind of animates in, and then that's where I then saw the telestrating part. Even though I have a telestrator, it was just so easy doing that. Oops, sorry. On my on the iPad.
Right. No, go ahead, TJ.
2 questions, Ken. Are you using Chroma Key to do that, or the Luma Key?
It's good question. Which one is it? I'll just.
And while you're looking that up, are you in presentation mode or regular edit mode?
I do it in presentation mode.
Yeah, on the keynote, it's presentation mode. It's a Chroma Key in the on the ATEM.
And I don't do. I'm only limited. I'm limited to one color because what I'm doing is I'm putting the color in the ATEM and just doing alpha channel with what's coming in through the Wacom. In my case, Bill.
I just note when you're using an iPad Pro with the Apple Pencil, it has modes in Keynote specifically for that. So there are taps that move you in and out of certain things in Keynote. So just investigate that if you decide to go with that kind of system.
Next question.
Aaron Husledge of Durham, North Carolina, USA says, has anyone experimented with the live HDR broadcast idea? Is that a thing?
I have. It's mostly what I do. It's going to be a thing. So that's all I can say right now. But yeah, you can definitely do it. It is difficult to. The main thing you have to figure out is what form of HDR you want to do. The way to get into YouTube is using HLG or HDR10. So basically, what you need to do is push that through, and you see an encoder that can create an HLS stream that is in one of those two color spaces. And so that's really the challenge with it currently, is that it's a little bit of a lift. You're not just doing an RTMP stream to get because the problem is you need 10-bit. So if you're going to do 10-bit, you can't do it over RTMP, or at least most people can't. And so you have to use an HLS delivery method, and YouTube does have that. It's hidden in there, is specifically for HDR. And then of course, there are other things you can do like Akamai. You can deliver via Akamai in HDR or HDR10, HLG, or even Vision if you have the right hardware. But you're delivering those as bits in segments into something like Akamai. Akamai doesn't care at that point, and then it's just a matter of your player. The only platform that really supports HDR at the moment, is the Apple players. Akamai will do it to some degree and put it out there, but Windows is a forest of unhappiness right now. And that has to do with HEVC support. It's a licensing mostly, but HEVC support on platforms other than Apple's platform is very rough. So the user who's going to watch has to be pretty advanced to be able to actually see what you're doing. But this is most of my day. Go ahead, TJ.
I'm just curious. Olympics broadcasts usually push the envelope for broadcast things. If they happen this year, do you think we will see HDR sports?
Yeah. I mean, they have the capability of doing it. I mean, the two things that they're pushing in, the two things that they've been talking about pushing, and I don't know what we'll see on regular TV when you turn it on, but 8K HDR 120 frame per second is something that the Japanese have been working on pretty hard. So NHK has been showing and doing tests. NHK and Sony have been doing tests for the last 4 years, on that. And so if you go to NAB and if you had availability of other tests, you would see that's the big thing. 8K 120 frame per second HDR. That's why I keep on talking about it. Why it might be a big deal soon. Go ahead, Leo.
So there is a glut of 4K HDR TVs that came out this year, and they're selling. To go to your point, TJ, they always come out with something that's got, and they're all branded with 2020 Olympics on them because they're selling them as part of that. Yeah. So there's just an enormous amount. I mean, we've got a 55-inch at Costco. It's under $400 in the UK for that.
You should not buy
it 4K.
And I highly recommend not buying anything without Vision. Dolby Vision is what you want. It's going to win. So because of and I admit that I work on some stuff with Dolby Vision. So, but with Apple pressing it hard, Apple's it would be even. You could figure all the stuff out, but Apple is just pressing down on Vision, and so the chances of something else winning is pretty low. We got to move to the next question. I want to apologize to our educators. We're going to run a little over, but we're going to do a quick sprint to get to you, and then we'll take a break and let you guys do a mic check. All right, next question.
Abraham, San Diego, has anyone been able to figure out the audio issue when using headphones while on Zoom?
Is there an audio issue while using headphones on Zoom? I'm using headphones on Zoom. That's where I ask. Go ahead, Bill, real quick.
Mickey, really quickly, when he's talking to people, says, are you wearing headphones? And that's mostly because if you have an open speaker, Zoom has an algorithm to try to cut off echoing and stuff like that. So you always want to be on headphones so you don't make Zoom work harder to get your audio right.
You'll always sound better with headphones. Next question.
Leo Mendel in London, UK. So if you win the lottery and had to spend it on office hours type events, what would you spend it on, Alex?
Well, yeah, we got $200 million right now after taxes. I think we figured this out. I would, first of all, I'd buy the building that I'm in. So I would just be like, I would like to buy this building and then build it. Because it's the old ILM stage. You have to have it be the heart of what we do. And so then I would probably build studios all over the world based on where people in this panel are. So basically, I try to hire a bunch of the folks. I try to get Leo and Ken to work with me and Mickey and everything else. We build studios and we build something where we have shared assets. Basically, you have a studio, and if you're part of the community, you can use the studio to shoot things. And, and if you're willing to give back into the community, when you do training, when you do support, when you do other things, you're building up credit that allows you to then go ahead and use, and state-of-the-art assets. So I think about that when I play the Olympics, or not the Olympics, when I play the lottery, all I think about is how much would my wife let me spend on office hours. So anyway, but I think if I won 200 million, I think I'd be able to spend 100 to 150 million on it. Go ahead, Leo.
I put this question in far too late. It should have been a second hour or a roll.
Yeah, there's a whole, we could have a whole second hour.
I think this is the second or maybe the fourth hour on a Sunday. Sorry.
Bring it up on a Sunday and we'll
Sunday.
We'll talk about it longer. Next question.
Comes from Art Bly Jr., who wants to talk video for worship for a moment. Are we switching from full screen? We are switching from, he is switching from full screen to lower thirds. His pastor sent me a PDF. Can I load that to PowerPoint 7, I think, or do I need to change the key on the ATEM? Pro Presenter. Thank you.
So you could probably pull the PDF in and key it if you had those. It just depends on the colors that are behind you. If it's over black, probably isn't the best solution, but depending on what you're trying to do, it could work. As a rough way to get the first one off the ground, I would start working with your pastor to get something that's more technically correct for what you need. But if I had to throw it in, I could probably key it. Go ahead, Jonas, real quick.
As someone who has worked a lot in the lyrics, I was a lot of lyrics operator for events. And I found that musicians always do something different in the last minute. So having it in an editable format is especially if you work with a lot of volunteers that don't communicate the changes early. Having it editable is key. And you could copy it out of the PowerPoint. I envision it being with the notes. Maybe you can get something from Song Select. They have a lot of stuff already prepared to import. That could help.
If you have technical musicians, click tracks tied to events, super powerful, in case you're wondering. Then the lyrics come out on time all the time. Next question.
James Fosling, Minneapolis, Minnesota. Like the new Apple TV color management, how hard or likely is someone or Apple doing this for an iMac for color management under $50? Were you discussing the new iPad Pro, and could that provide a standardized viewer?
We think so. I mean, right now, the best way to standardize your iMac is a Spider, in my opinion. But I think that the iPad's going to give us a pretty standardized view of for a lot of people, if this is their version of the truth that most people will believe. Once that gets into the good enough, is most likely what's going to happen. Next question.
Jonas Dotel, Reutlingen, best way to hide shadow from microphone: diffuse the light, change position, or add more lights?
Roscoe, real quick. We're just going to go one answer at a time.
Go high or go big.
Yeah. Perfect. Next question.
Add more lights. Cami Weinsvig of Redondo Beach.
Carmi.
God, why do I keep doing that? Because I'm sorry, Carmi.
Keep going.
My apologies. Is the test kitchen gone for good?
We may take a break, and mostly because my schedule has become unmanageable. so I have to be focused. So we're, Nate is taking over some of the switching duties, and we'll pull back a little bit. But I have to. My schedule is now pretty crazy for the next 8 weeks. We're doing a crazy project. Next question.
Edgar Mohn in Berlin says, how does meetings meters work? My experience is that it only appears short in the meeting and pops out again. It stays even not long enough to see the quality bump up. Do I have to register somewhere?
Go ahead, Roscoe, real quick.
Just do it multiple times if you don't get it the first time.
Next question.
Deborah Woodfork of Washington, D.C. Is it possible to use the Surface Pro 7 as a telestrator? I have a MacBook Pro and soon will have an Atem Mini thanks to office hours.
You should absolutely be able to do that. It's just a matter of something that has white that you can draw on. And then, people have been doing it with a Raspberry Pi. I'm sure that you could do it with a Surface. Anything. You just have to find an art program that has as little interface as possible and let you draw on it. And that's it. So it's not complicated. Windows, Raspberry Pi, all those things are doable. Jeffrey, real quick, and then we'll take the quick break.
In the Windows Store, you have telestrator programs that you can run. And if you can do green screen through there in Chroma Key, you should be able to do it. I've done it on a few of different laptops and desktops.
Yep. Excellent. All right, we're going to take a quick break, give everybody a moment to shake their legs and do mic checks with our educators. So if you're an educator and you want to take part in the conversation, raise your digital hand, and we'll bring you in, and then we'll do mic checks. Now, Mickey, you're handing off the reins here, or are you staying around?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, I can do checks and then I'll
Okay,
hand
great.
it off.
Who wants to?
And sorry,
did we figure
we're
out
killing
who's